Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is going to be part 2 of where can you go on your summer holidays, the all important question that we have been asking. If you haven't seen part 1, go over to my channel and check that out and then come back and watch part 2. In this video, I am going to be talking about a fair few destinations. I'm going to be talking about Sri Lanka, the USA, the UAE, the Caribbean, Mexico. So if they all sound like places you would want to go on holiday this summer, stay tuned to find out what the restrictions are and if you can or can't go there on holiday this summer. Now, I'm going to start with the USA because the USA is quite simple. Even though Universal and Disney in Florida, because that is the primary destination for most Brits in the summer in America, even though they have opened, the US has not yet lifted their flight restrictions. They are expected to lift their flight restrictions on the 1st of July, so not that long to go. But that's only a rumour, nothing has been confirmed. So if you want to go to the USA this summer, just keep checking at when they're going to open their flight restrictions, but also remember their risk of coronavirus is still quite high. That's not to say that everywhere you go in America is high, because I know certain states are dealing with it really, really well, but obviously you still have to be careful. Another place that's set to reopen in July is the UAE. So that's Dubai, Abu Dhabi and all those other states in the UAE. They've not given a specific date yet, but from what I've been reading, Emirates Airline have actually been put on 48 hours notice from the UAE government. And my guess is from that is that the UAE government is going to say we are open, and that means that Emirates, Etihad and the other airlines stationed in the UAE are ready to go and ready to fly. Some of the airlines are already flying to certain destinations, but obviously you have to have passports and clearance to go to those destinations because the borders are not yet reopened. There hasn't been any information about if you go to the UAE, if you will be tested or quarantined or anything like that. Hopefully it may just be a test and you won't have to go into quarantine. But as I said, there's not yet been any information released about that. So keep your eyes peeled if you do want to go to one of those destinations this summer. Mexico is one destination that has been quite heavily advertised as being open this summer. I've even seen some advertisements on social media about that they may be doing, if you book 2 nights you're going to get another 2 nights free, or if you book a week you're going to get another week free in hotels and whatnot. That all may just be hearsay, but here's to hoping that actually there might be some good holiday deals. At the moment, the resort area of Quintana Roo, I've probably butchered that, but essentially where Cancun is, that is for all intents and purposes open limitedly, as in the hotels are not at full capacity yet and they won't be at full capacity for a long time. But Delta, for one, are flying down to Mexico, and I think Southwest are going to start flying down there soon as well. So they are open, and from my research you don't have to have a test in order to go there. You can just go on holiday to Mexico, but there are social distancing measures still in place. Sri Lanka is a UK backpacker hotspot, especially in the summer with people going off for their gap years, etc. With Sri Lanka, they are set to open around early August. That is what's being reported. The date they have said is they want to reopen by August 1st, so not too long to wait. They've also stated that if you could have a possibility of having to have 4 tests for coronavirus if you are going to Sri Lanka, you will need to obtain a test in your country 72 hours before you depart to go. And then you get tested again for free upon arrival in Sri Lanka, where you will then need to stay in a hotel that they've sort of designated until you are given the all clear. Then on the 5th day that you are there, you will then need to get tested in a mobile testing unit. And if you are staying longer, again, you will then need to get another test. So essentially, depending on how long you are staying, you will need to be tested 4 times for coronavirus, which is quite a good system, but it also might be quite a lot of hassle if you are only staying there for a short amount of time. But obviously from the UK it's quite a long way away, so you're probably staying there longer, but 2 weeks probably is a minimum if you're going that far. Portugal is a big one for the UK because it is a very popular summer destination. For all intents and purposes, Portugal is actually open for tourism right now for most countries in Europe that are in the sort of Schengen area. Countries, the UK, Canada, the US and Brazil, citizens from those countries are only being allowed to Portugal if those countries reciprocate the no quarantine rule that Portugal has put in place. At the moment, if you come to the UK, you have to go into quarantine for 14 days. Portugal are saying that people from the UK will only be allowed to go to Portugal if the government essentially reciprocates the no quarantine. So if Portuguese people come to the UK, they won't have to go into quarantine for 14 days. That is the kind of air bridges that the governments have been talking about. The UK hasn't set up an air bridge with anyone yet, but that is what's happening in Portugal at the moment. It is essentially open for most countries apart from those that are not reciprocating the no quarantine rule. As well as for Portugal, what I've just stated is only actually for mainland Portugal. The Azores and Madeira have actually got their own set of rules as well. So if you are going to those places, you will need to check the rules that are in place there. Now, the Caribbean, and obviously there are a lot of places in the Caribbean, and I have got notes here. So excuse me if I'm looking down, I'm actually just checking my notes so you are getting the best information. So I am going to be talking to you about the US Virgin Islands, so St. Croix, St. John and St. Thomas, Antigua, St. Bart's, Bahamas, Aruba, Turks and Caicos and the Cayman Islands. And I'm actually going to start with the Cayman Islands because this is one that I'm actually really interested in. They have said that they are unlikely to reopen until September, and they are now saying that that date is not looking good. I haven't done loads of research into how badly the Cayman Islands were hit by coronavirus or if they're just being overly cautious. So if you were planning on going to the Cayman Islands this summer or even later than this summer, you may need to check again. I'm going to go back to the top of the list and talk about the US Virgin Islands, so St. Croix, St. John and St. Thomas. They are open with no restrictions as long as you pass a health check at the airport, and the only thing they've stated is that there's going to be social distancing on the beaches. So the US Virgin Islands are looking like a good place to go on holiday this summer. They've not said you will need to get a negative test before you go or anything like that. They've only stated that there will be social distancing on the beaches and you will need to pass health checks at the airport, and by health checks I think it basically will be temperature checks. Antigua. Now, Antigua actually started flights back up with the US on June 4th, so a couple weeks ago now, and you have to be wearing a mask in a public space, and you will have to provide proof of a negative coronavirus test before you go, or provide it upon arrival. And there will also be, you will also have to fill out a health declaration, which includes information about where you're staying and your personal information, so that if they need to trace you, they can contact you to let you know if you've been in contact with someone that has got coronavirus. As I said, they're doing health checks at the airport, and that is your temperature, and they're also doing a rapid antigen test, which at the moment is free on arrival, and there is that sounds quite good, getting a rapid antigen test upon arrival to see whether you've had coronavirus or to see whether you've currently got coronavirus. St. Bart's is actually opening in 2 days time, June 22nd. Obviously I'm filming this on June 20th. They are going to be open for people from all countries as long as you can provide a negative coronavirus test, so that's quite good. If you can't get a test, you will be able to obtain one upon arrival. It just means you'll need to go into quarantine for 24 hours until that test result comes back. So not the end of the world, because obviously some countries, especially the UK, it's really hard for us to get a coronavirus test unless you have symptoms for one. In fact, you can't get a test, you can't pay for a test. You can only get one from the NHS. So people from the UK that want to go on holiday this summer and need to obtain these tests, it's going to be a little bit difficult unless we can start, unless someone privatises them and we can pay to get one. So it's a little bit iffy about that at the moment. If you are staying in St. Bart's for longer than 7 nights, you will need to get retested on the 7th night of your stay, 7th day of your stay. But children under 10 do not get tested. The Bahamas. Now, the Bahamas are opening on July 1st, like a lot of other countries. Unless you have a private jet or a private yacht, you can go back to the Bahamas if you are lucky enough to have either of those two things or both of those things. It's going to be social distancing and masks in public spaces and temperature checks at the airport, and that is all they've said about that. It doesn't say at the moment whether you will need a test upon arrival or whether you will need to provide a negative test upon arrival. Aruba. Now, Aruba is opening to Europe and Canada on July the 1st. And when I say Europe, I am actually including the UK in this because a lot of countries are still including the UK when they state Europe. There's no information on testing yet, but there will be temperature checks and social distancing when you get to the airport, and obviously social distancing throughout the country. And Aruba is opening back up to US travellers on July 10th, so not too long after the rest of us can go back to Aruba. And the final one I'm going to talk about is Turks and Caicos, and they are open for business on July 22nd. However, the cruise terminal is not opening back up until at least August 31st, so quite a long time away, and I think that speaks a lot about the cruise industry. I don't see many, if any, cruises going ahead this summer purely because of the risk of infection upon cruises. And some hotels such as the Como Parrot Cay are not opening until August 1st. When I looked up this hotel, just to see why it had been mentioned in my research, it is a luxury hotel and quite a sort of big hotel on the island. So that may give some indication about what other large hotels are doing as well. So that is it for me today, and I hope you have enjoyed this video. If I find any more information about any countries or any other countries that I haven't mentioned, I may make another video about it, but I think I've covered quite a lot of places, and there is information coming out every single day about which countries are opening up for tourists. So once again, I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, hit the like button, and if you'd like to see more, I hope you hit the subscribe button. See you next time.